Well, it's been 9 years of the Modi government, 9 years in which there have been significant gains as far as our economy, several other areas as well, but also a period of significant challenges. To look at the 9-year period, what some of the key achievements have been, not just in his ministry, but in fact across what the government has achieved, and also some of the big challenges going up. One of the ministers in the government, I personally believe, is one of the most articulate and somebody with a real vision. He really thinks a lot, certainly about the areas which he works at very, very closely. Rajeev Chandrashekhar, thanks very much, Mr. Chandrashekhar, for being with us. My first question to you, it's on your own ministry and on your own work, because in a sense, what you do with digital and IT is very much associated with India's economic future. Now, when I look at my phone now and look at digital penetration, and look at a lot of the appliances, the apps which the government has developed over the last couple of years, that's great, that's wonderful. But if I was to tell you I'm getting bored, and what are you as minister going to tell me about the future of India's digital growth in, let's say, the next 5 years from now?
No, Vishnu, none of us should be bored. Both of us should not be bored. I think anybody who's an observer of the Indian tech ecosystem and the digital economy in general should be feeling that we are living in the most exciting time ever in the history of independent India. What we have achieved in the last 9 years is nothing short of phenomenal. I happened to say this in a program last year that even I was in the audience when the Honorable Prime Minister launched Digital India in 2015, and even I felt that most of those goals and outcomes that he was laying out there in 2015 were not achievable in India. But here we are 8-9 years later, and we have not just transformed the narrative of governance, Vishnu, using technology. You know, the old narrative about India's government and governance being leaky, corrupt, has all been transformed by DBT and the India stack. The fact that we are never responsive and used to take in the past years and decades to do vaccinations, that has been demonstrated at scale to the world that we can deliver 220 crore vaccines through the power of tech. So I think there has been a lot achieved. But if you look to the future, look to the next coming years, the Prime Minister very beautifully summarizes it as the India Techade, a decade of technology opportunities. And I think that phrase in itself lays very clear to all those who are followers of the digital economy about what our ambitions are. We plan to be $1 trillion digital economy, Vishnu, which is taking the 6 or 7% of the digital economy as a percentage of GDP to 20% of GDP. This is going to come from innovation, it is going to come from entrepreneurship, it is going to come from rapid acceleration of the digitalization of our own governance and our public services. So I actually think whether it's AI, whether it's blockchain, whether it's quantum computing, whether it's high performance computing, whether it's semiconductors or microelectronics, there is not going to be any part of the technology ecosystem, global technology ecosystem, where Indian entrepreneurs, Indian startups will not be present. So I think, frankly, for somebody who's an old man and who spent 30 years in tech, 30 plus years in tech, this is certainly the most exciting time for anybody who's a stakeholder of the tech economy.
What is the future of AI in India?
No, I think it's an extremely exciting, it's a kinetic enabler of the digital economy, as I am very happy to keep repeatedly say. We are going to approach AI as really a very, very important opportunity for our startups and our innovation ecosystem. We certainly want to be playing a leadership role in how AI evolves. This is the year where we are chairman of the program for AI, a coalition of AI nations around the world. And we certainly want to be at the cutting edge in terms of where this goes. But we also want to play a role in creating the guardrails in terms of where AI should not go. And we have laid out our doctrine and our thinking for the rest of the world to follow, that we expect to regulate AI through the prism of user harm. We will not necessarily go down the road of some other nations of regulating it through use cases and say this area should not have AI. We will regulate it in a way that AI cannot cause harm to those who are on the internet. whether it is misinformation harm or it is any other kind of harm. We certainly don't want AI to do anything but create good for our people and the digital navigants.
Skill development is another area where you focused in at very, very closely. But if you look at skill development and if you look at AI at a time when there are so many concerns that AI will replace jobs, then how do you sort of match your two areas? AI, which will replace some series of jobs, and skill development where you're really looking to employ?
Vishnu, I mean, you know this as much as I do. I think technology has, over the years, over the history of technology, always transformed the workforce, has always disrupted the normal in terms of what we know as work, jobs, job roles, and indeed enterprise and entrepreneurship. So therefore, I think like we saw the internet do to businesses and the digital economy and the economy at large, you will see that AI will disrupt, will create, in a sense, deep transformation of what we consider the workforce. But what that actually means is the challenge for us is not it is also an opportunity as much as a challenge, which is to create more and more AI-enabled, AI-ready, future-ready skilled talent, which really there is a shortage all around the world. And India can be in a lot of ways, and I'm not saying this as a cliche, but really in a material sense, India can be the hub for future-ready, AI-ready talent for India's own innovation economy as well as for the rest of the world. So I see this very differently. I don't see this as something that we need to wring our hand or sort of get very concerned about. It is what it is because technology is like this. It does disrupt, and the future is going to see a lot more disruptions coming at us from technology. But to seize the opportunity to create talent that is upskilled, that is in a sense ready for these future ready, is the vision of our Prime Minister. And in this budget, he has announced 8,800 crores for a whole new skilling program that is defined by what he has said, which is industry ready, future ready skills for our youth. So we certainly see this as a challenge, but we also see that there's an underlying significant opportunity for the youth of India.
You know, another area which I know you have a personal interest, and it is very closely associated with Atmanirbharta. And of course, we talk about Atmanirbharta when it comes to defense. And certainly that principle extends to every area. For example, when we look at semiconductors in the future and stepping up manufacture, it is Atmanirbharta, it's semiconductors made in India. But my question is about the space program. Yesterday we had a wonderful launch. We had a remarkable satellite launched over there, which will enable our armed forces and ultimately civilians also to get accurate navigation without the use of GPS. And we made it ourselves. It's ours,
yes.
Right? Patent India. How important is that?
Oh, no, it's a very, very important marker in terms of our own ambitions, our own capabilities, and what the future holds for us in terms of both potential opportunities and what we intend to do. The Navig chip, which is really a domestically designed chip, a semiconductor, which is very core to the whole global positioning system that is going to work off the ISRO constellation of satellites, is a very, very powerful statement of not just Atmanirbharta on one hand, but also about the deep capabilities, the deep tech capabilities that are required to back that Atmanirbharta ambition. This is about designing a semiconductor chip, getting it manufactured, putting it in a system, and having the ecosystem of satellites to support an absolutely independent global positioning system that is designed and originated and launched and managed from India. I think it is not a small thing, and it also represents, Vishnu, a tremendous part of the Prime Minister's vision that the government's enterprise and private sector entrepreneurship together have designed that Navig chip. And I was very proud and privileged to have launched that chip earlier last year in Gujarat with the ISRO Space Application Center people and Accord, the startup that actually has built that chip. So I think it's a very, very powerful thing. Yesterday, I was glued to the TV watching that launch.
As was
and I think
in
many ways that launch and the technology underlying it represents our capability today and what we can bring to bear in the next decade.
Let's talk a little bit more about semiconductors. We want to step up the manufacture of semiconductors here because our own demand is huge. One small area, the requirement for smart chips and semiconductors in the automotive sector. The fact that we can't, there's not enough for us to import at this stage and we want to do it ourselves. So in terms of a policy, in terms of a vision, in terms of the actual ability to manufacture at scale, where do we stand?
No, look, one of the most brilliant stories about in the last 9 years is what we have done with electronics manufacturing. And it has been absolutely Prime Minister Narendra Modi's vision from the get-go that that whole space that had been abandoned in 2014 to rampant free trade agreements and imports, and we had laid waste an entire ecosystem of electronics manufacturing has been rebuilt. And we are today sitting 9 years on, where 9 years ago we were importing 80% of our mobile phones, exporting almost nothing. Today we manufacture and assemble almost 100% of the mobile phones. We are this year exporting almost 1 lakh crores of this really sophisticated category of electronics products. And when people like Tim Cook and the Apple and Samsung leadership looks at India as a very significant rising presence in the global value chains for electronics, that in turn leads to another opportunity, which is the semiconductor design, innovation and manufacture opportunity. Because you know that in today's world, the heart and soul of every piece of electronics is the silicon or the semiconductor that powers it. And I think there the Prime Minister has moved very rapidly. In 2021, he set aside 76,000 crore rupees and has actively encouraged us at MeitY and the Government of India at large to go out there and attract investment proposals on manufacture, on packaging, and also set aside money to build semiconductor research capabilities and design innovation capabilities. I can safely report to you that by the end of 23, this financial year, this calendar year, we will have not less than 25 to 30 startups that are designing cutting edge semiconductors for the future from almost zero 3 years ago. I can also tell you that by the end of this year, we will also have packaging, silicon and semiconductor packaging units that have been invested in India and semiconductor fabs. So these are big steps. We are going to be, I think, in the coming decade, a presence in the semiconductor value chain as much as we are already in the electronics value chain.
Two more questions. Firstly, if we talk about Atmanirbharta, another area that you look at very closely, are interested is national security. Is it not incredible that India as a country now designs, for example, state-of-the-art warships to an Indian design, built in India for an Indian requirement? We are not picking up technology and systems from outside and then modifying it to suit our requirements. We are designing things exactly the way we want it. That's just one example. Our entire ballistic missile program, our nuclear submarines, so many areas where going forward, we will no longer be the largest importer of weaponry, because over a period of time, we will have mastered the manufacture of this technology in India, and that in turn will change our strategic equation across the region massively.
Oh, absolutely. I think, in a world of this type of geopolitics, having our own capability and being able to, in a sense, deal with our strategic requirements through our own industry and through our own innovation ecosystem is a very important strategic capability. And I was privileged and honored to be at the launch of the INS Vikrant, and you didn't mention that. It is such a symbol of engineering at scale on one hand, and the complex electronics, microelectronics, sensors that go into that kind of a platform on the other hand, and all designed and built in India. So I think we are, from a defense and national security capability, not just intent, not just from a point of view of our Prime Minister saying we are determined to create a strong security presence to defend ourselves, to protect ourselves, but also an ecosystem is being built to ensure that happens through Indian industry and through Indian innovation. I also want to bring this thing to your attention, Vishnu. Remember, this is the same country just about a decade or 12 years ago, we were importing trainer aircraft, which is basic trainer aircraft from a country that made chocolates. And I remember in Parliament asking this question, how come India, which has built the HPT-32, how come the India that has built the HT-32 in the past, it's the same organization, HAL, was not able to do a basic trainer, and we had to import it from Switzerland. So that whole sense of having to import for whatever reasons, for commissions, for agents, whatever was driving that, to now having a domestic ecosystem powered by the HALs, powered by the BELs, and the private entrepreneurship around it, I think is a powerful statement of change that ensures our own strength and security in the coming years.
I agree completely, and I think all of this rides on what we discussed in the recent past, our demographic dividend. There is a young generation of Indians that has so much to do. Hopefully there'll be jobs to match that. Thank you, Minister, very much for speaking to us. We could keep chatting. I'm sure we'll do that in the future.